That is the winning argument, that the president that you guys wanted elected is asking for this. You need to get it done.
With all of the storylines coming out of Washington, D.C. these days, we look for those who have the experience and the integrity to make sense of it all. Today's guest, Jake Sherman, is the veteran journalist and former Politico Playbook author who talks about what leadership was, is, and may soon be, in a place where power is not only on display, but in charge. From Ballard Studios in Washington, D.C., it's 13th and Park.
The hard things that are necessary, we either do it or we'll pay the price down the road.
That often is missing in politics.
We have to solve everything.
It's a nightmare.
You and I can differ, but that doesn't mean you and I cannot be friends.
I have faith in the American people.
Those are the facts.
The Illuminati, right there. Aliens could have invaded and nothing would surprise me at this point.
We went from North Korea to Eminem. That's a lot, man.
What's in this tea?
Jake, welcome to the show. I read your stuff all the time. I mean, it's almost like irresistible, right? And of course, you come from a long history of journalism, going back to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, NBC, Politico. What is it today that's fundamentally different for you as you're not only gathering intel, but reporting it out? How is it different now than it was even, say, 75 days ago?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a thrill to be here. I was at Politico for 11 years,
Wow.
which is a long time for anyone to be anywhere.
Yeah.
And how is it different now? I mean, the news cycle has sped up tremendously. I mean, when I was at Politico and I was writing Playbook from 2016 until 2020, we added a second newsletter of the day. And that was seen as like, what are they doing?
Radical.
Right, exactly. Now at Punchbowl News, which we founded in 2021, we're 3 newsletters a day. And we have no problem filling those any day of the week, just with news and intelligence here from Capitol Hill and from anywhere where politics really is playing out.
You know, you've done a lot in chronicling the rise and fall of leadership here in Washington, D.C. What is leadership all about today? How has it changed in terms of how it's used, how it's demonstrated?
Leadership has changed a lot, really, since the 1980s and 1990s. Tip O'Neill, Jim Wright were relatively strong speakers, 2 Democratic speakers, and could really bend the institution to their will. We don't see that anymore. I mean, we saw that with Nancy Pelosi. I always say my litmus test on Capitol Hill is if you cannot admit that Nancy Pelosi was an effective speaker, then you're not being honest with yourself, no matter what party you are.
Right. Nancy
Pelosi was a very effective speaker. We have had a variety of speakers since I've started covering Congress. I started with Nancy Pelosi, John Boehner, Paul Ryan, Kevin McCarthy, Mike Johnson. Really, what's in vogue for House Republicans is a weak speakership, a speakership that kind of bubbles up from the rank and file, which has its ups and downs, I would say, but is very different than having a speaker who exerts his or her will over the institution. But listen, John Boehner used to say, a leader without followers is a guy taking a walk. And that's the best way to think about leadership, is you have to bring people with you. You have to be able to convince them that your pathway is the best pathway to achieve the end. And I've noticed in the leaders that I've covered, both Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi were quite effective leaders in their day. And they both kind of saw a point on the horizon, said, I'm going to get to that point and I am going to fixate on that point until I get there, and I'm not going to waver. I see a lot of leaders now on Capitol Hill getting nervous and switch paths and kind of juke, I guess, a little bit is the best way to say it. Good leaders don't do that. And I'd say that's one of the main things that I've noticed.
How much of it right now is maybe the square off between persona and policy? Because when you talk about losing your North Star and not knowing exactly where you're going and directing yourself fully to that, is that because more than ever, the persona of a political leader is gained ascendance? I mean, certainly the president would be a good example of that.
Yeah, my father always said that members of Congress have 3 main goals. It's to get power, keep power, and increase power. And I think you're seeing that a little bit with Trump right now, is that he's willing to take things to the extreme right now because he doesn't have to face voters again, and he doesn't have to worry about holding on to power. And there's 2 different ways to view power in Washington. There's the Nancy Pelosi way, which is your goal is to use the power you have to achieve the ends you want and not worry as much about the impacts politically, right? So if you look at 2009, 2010, there was the healthcare bill, there was Dodd-Frank, which was foisted upon them because of the global financial crisis. There was a cap and trade, which didn't work out the way Nancy Pelosi wanted to, but she just said, I have power right now, and I am going to go and use it, and I'm going to do what I need to do to get this stuff through. Then there's the idea of keeping and maintaining power. That could be good for keeping your majority, but if I were the House Republican Speaker and I was staring down the fact that I'm probably going to lose my majority through no fault of my own in 2026, I would use the power that I had, and I would use it to the maximum degree that I could.
I remember when I worked years ago with Rudy Giuliani when he was mayor, and he basically said, it's all about getting the job done. If he does the job, the politics will take care of itself. If he doesn't do the job, there's really nothing that's going to take care of it, right?
That's right. Another quote that I always used to hear John Boehner say, if you do the right things for the right reasons, things work out for you.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff in this business, I'll be honest with you, is out of your control. We create in this country policy in a political environment.
Right.
And that's very difficult because you can't always make the best decisions in a political environment. And you don't know what the world's going to look like. I don't know what the world's going to look like in Memorial Day of this year, let alone Memorial Day, Labor Day of 2026. So you just kind of have to hope that you pursue the right policies, you do the right thing, and things work out for you, you know?
So let's take both chambers. Let's start with the House. You just talked about Speaker Johnson. You know, he has a kind of a push and pull going on between governing. He's got to actually move things. And some of the what I call the hardliners that are drawing very bright lines that they don't want to cross. What do you do if you're the speaker to navigate that divide and still make the trains, if not run on time, at least run?
2 words, Donald Trump. So if you're Mike Johnson, you say Donald Trump's agenda is on the line.
Right.
Donald Trump gave us this majority. Donald Trump wants us to do this. Get out of his way. And that's what he's saying, by the way.
Right.
He might not say it as blunt. He's nicer than I am. But that is the winning argument, that the president that you guys wanted elected is asking for this. You need to get it done. That is his only play, because he's not going to bridge the divide between Mike Lawler on the one hand and Chip Roy on the other hand.
Of course,
These are 2 very different men. When I started covering Congress in 2009, Alabama was an all-Democratic delegation.
That's right.
Mississippi had Democrats. Nancy Pelosi had Barney Frank on the one hand and Blue Dogs, Alan Boyd from Florida. I mean, people in today's Democratic Party wouldn't have a place. In 2010, when House Republicans won the majority, you had the same kind of ideological diversity. And by the way, those were large majorities, 20-something seat majorities. Mike Johnson has 1 seat. You remember in 2017, when they voted on the House Republican budget, 13 Republicans voted against that document. There was a lot of leeway to have mistakes and to have diversity. Now Mike Johnson doesn't have that. So his only card is Trump.
So let's go to the other chamber. So you're Senator Thune, majority leader, right? In the past, Thune has been very, very nervous about the use of tariffs as a way to enforce fair trade. But now, of course, he's 100% with and behind President Trump. But he has members who are getting restless. We saw the comments from Senator Cruz from Texas, who said this could lead to a blowout for Republicans in 26 midterms. You also saw the legislation co-sponsored by Chuck Grassley from Iowa and trying to rein in some of this, you might say, rubber stamping of the full Trump agenda. Where do you think that's going to go? And how long could Senator Thune keep his coalition together to keep behind the president's game plan?
I agree with everything you said, besides one thing. I think Thune is still pretty wobbly on tariffs. Putting a bill on the Senate floor that gives Congress veto power effectively over tariffs is going to be seen by the White House and by reporters, rightfully so, as a challenge to Trump's authority. Now, there's a mechanism to put it on the floor of the House called the discharge petition.
Right.
That will take more than a month. You need 30 legislative days. That bill's not filed yet as of right now. All of that said, it's going to take a lot for Thune to hold together this coalition. But there's a difference between people talking up here and people taking action. Ted Cruz and Senate Republicans and House Republicans can talk until they're blue in the face. Until they're ready to take action, it's just talk.
You co-authored the book, The Hill to Die On, which I think a lot about in the here and now. You talked about, deal making. You talked about showdowns, the use of power. How much is that in play with the president right now that he has chosen tariffs as the hill he insists on taking, and he wants everyone to be with him all the way through this, what could be a very trying period of time?
The use of power here is different for Trump than it is for members on Capitol Hill. Trump, again, does not have to face voters. House and Senate Republicans will face voters next November. He wants his power to be at a maximum, which is having his entire party behind him. But if you're going home every weekend and you're a House Republican and you're facing constituents, their stock portfolio is down 25%, inflation is high, consumer confidence, because of those two reasons, is low. It is a mess.
Okay, so now let's go to the other side of the fence. You have Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader in the House, talking about getting maybe 60 plus seats in the midterms, right? Now, this is coming on behalf of a party that is at its lowest approval ratings in like a generation. So I know you have to say certain things, but do you really take that to the bank at all, given so many imponderables that are surrounding all of us right now?
I don't take anything to the bank. I don't. My view on data, broadly speaking, is that no piece of data in and of itself is dispositive or telling, but a wealth of data could lead you to a decent enough conclusion. Now, the president's party loses seats in the first midterm almost always.
Almost always.
And I hate to sound like an old dude, but when I started covering this stuff back in 2009, there were a lot more seats in play than there are now. The country's more polarized, districts are more tightly drawn. I could argue the good and the bad on both of those things. I tend to think it's not great, but it is what it is. So winning 60 seats right now is a huge, huge hurdle. Jeffries has to say what he says to raise money and to keep morale of the troops up.
So we're all seeing the Bernie AOC roadshow, which if you're into performances and events, it's a pretty interesting thing, right? They're getting big crowds, but also there is more suggestions than ever that Democrats in 26, before they even get to the general, could be facing a lot of primaries from younger progressives, right? How much does that either threaten hegemony within the Democratic Party or perhaps maybe supercharge it going into a midterm they have to do well in?
There's a couple ways to look at it. Yes, people are calling this the Democrats' Tea Party moment. A lot of these seats are safe Democratic seats. You know, Jan Schakowsky in Illinois is a safe Democratic seat. She has a primary challenger from the left. That seat is going to be a Democratic seat no matter what. I don't have a preference on who has the seat, obviously, but it won't matter at all. One way or the other, it's going to be a Democratic seat. The larger question is like, does a leftward shifting party put middle of the road candidates at risk, right? Let's see, Mike Lawler in upstate New York. Is his Democratic challenger forced to take positions that he or she otherwise would not have to take because of the leftward shift of the party? If you're a smart Democrat, you don't take the bait on those issues.
Right.
You stick to your district, your issue set, and assume that the hatred of Trump on the left is going to drag every Democrat out. Doesn't matter what position you take. I mean, look at Josh Gottheimer, who's a House Democrat in New Jersey. He's running on a tax cut pledge.
Right.
Right? I mean, you got to run the race that you have to run, not the race that the left wants you to run.
Do you think those kinds of candidates, Jake, could start to stand out more and more? I know we were very divided, divisive, everyone in their own corner, but could those kind of singular acts of political courage translate into more and more success as we start to move forward?
Yes, it should. If you take positions that fit your district and don't kowtow to the national party and the national figures, that's really good, right? And both parties would be wise, in my estimation, to encourage that, right? Republicans and Democrats, run the race that fits your district.
I'm fascinated by Elon Musk and the whole travel journey he's been on since day one with the Trump administration, and most recently in being on a different page on tariffs than Peter Navarro. How much do you think Musk will continue to influence the Trump administration, and that ultimately, as much heat as he's gotten from a lot of quarters, actually may turn out to be one of the winners when it's all said and done?
I think that Musk was brought in for a singular purpose, and it wasn't tariffs, right? He was brought in to cut government spending. And whether you like or hate the guy, he's one of the geniuses of our time, right? That's not up for argument. His political journey has been quite interesting, from an Obama supporter who took government subsidies to get Tesla going, and now here. It's quite the journey. What people forget is that tariffs, broadly speaking, are not conservative economic principle, right? That is not something that the Republican Party has been embracing for 30 or 40 years. I mean, it doesn't take a political science professor to know that protectionist trade policy is not where the Republican Party has been for most of its history. And I don't think Musk is a traditional conservative or traditional Republican.
Traditional anything.
No, he's not a traditional anything. That's just something that stuck out to me. But Musk is fascinating. But Doge is not going the way a lot of people thought it would go, I think is fair to say.
Last question I have is the whole thing about anti-Semitism on campus in particular, and the heat that a lot of institutions are now under because of allegedly not doing the right thing. Where do you think that all goes? Do you think there is a bit of a leavening in higher education, in the politics maybe even of higher education versus what we've seen?
I don't know the answer to that. I went to George Washington University, which had its own massive anti-Semitic problems last year.
Yeah.
I also am a graduate of Columbia University. So
Okay, it speaks for itself.
Two institutions. And these were not a problem when I was in college.
Yeah.
I mean, I've experienced, as I'm sure you have, anti-Semitism throughout my life. I don't know how it gets better. I don't know one way or the other whether anything that Trump has done with these universities will make it better. I'm not criticizing it or passing judgment one way or the other. I think it's really sad. And I think that there is a sickness that has taken hold about hatred towards Jews that is just dangerous and scary. And I see it in my everyday life. I've turned off my mentions on X because I don't like to see any of this stuff. I've had that stuff happen to me in the past. I don't know what's going to solve it. And I just hope my children don't grow up in a world where they have to be worried about being a Jew.
Well, Jake, I really appreciate the time you spent with us today. What you do, and you probably don't fully appreciate it every minute of the day since you're racing to keep up the 3,000 storylines, you provide information, and information leading to knowledge. The more informed we are, the more we understand about things, and the more we're allowed to make our own call. So keep doing what you're doing. It's really helping all of us feel a little bit better about what's ahead, as opposed to the stock market indices that are bedeviling us in the here and now.
Don't open your 401k. Don't open your stock portfolio. Just put it out of your mind. Go take a walk is what I suggest to people.
It might be a long walk.
Yeah, that's right.
Take care of yourself, Jake.
Thank you.